Okay, going to read chapter 3 from Gaston Bachelard's Water and Dreams. 3. The Charon Complex, the Ophelia Complex. Silence and moon, cemetery and nature. Jules Lefoucault, Moralities Legendaires, French. 1. Amateur mythologers are sometimes useful. They work in good faith in that zone where the first rationalizing is done. They, therefore, leave unexplained what they explain. Since reason does not explain dreams, they also classify and fit fables into systems a little hastily. But this rapidity has its value. It simplifies classification. It also shows that classification, which is readily accepted, corresponds to real tendencies active in the mind of the mythologer and of his readers. Thus it is that the kindly but wordy Santine, author of Piccola, and The Long Way Around, wrote The Mythology of the Rhine, which can furnish us with an elementary lesson for rapidly classifying ideas. Santine, now nearly a century ago, understood the primordial importance of the tree cult. With tree worship, he associates the worship of the dead, and Santine sets forth a law that could be called the law of the four lands of death, a law obviously in keeping with the law of the imagination of the four elements. The Celts used strange and diverse means in regard to the disposal of human remains. In one country, they were burned, and the native tree furnished the wood for the priory. In another, the Totem, tree of death, hollowed out with a hatchet, served as a casket for its owner. This casket was buried in the ground unless it was abandoned to the river's current, which was to carry it heaven knows where. Finally, in certain districts, there existed a practice, a horrible one, of exposing the body to be devoured by birds of prey. And the place of this grim exposure was the summit, the very top of that same tree which was planted at the deceased's birth, and which, this time, unlike the others, was not to fall with him. And Santine adds, without giving sufficient proof or examples, now, what do we see in these four very different means of restoring human remains to the four elements, to the air, to the water, to the earth, and to the fire? Four types of funerals practiced from time immemorial, and still today in the Indies among the followers of Brahma, Buddha, Zoroaster, the Parsis of Bombay, like the drowning dervishes of Ganges, are well acquainted with this. Finally, Santine reports that around 1560, Dutch workers, in the act of digging in some deposits of the Zee, encountered at great depth several tree trunks miraculously preserved by petrification. Each of these trunks had been inhabited by a man, of which some traces remained. They too almost fossilized. Obviously, it was the Rhine, this German Ganges, which had carried them to that place, the one carrying the other. From his birth, man was dedicated to the vegetable kingdom. He had his own personal tree. Death had to have the same protection as life, thus placed once more in the heart of the vegetable, given back to the living heart of the tree. The corpse was delivered up to the fire, or else to the earth, or waited among the leaves and treetops for dissolution in the air, helped along by the night birds, the thousand phantoms of the wind, or finally, more intimately, still stretched out in its natural coffin, its vegetable double, the living, devouring sarcophagus. In the tree, between two knots, it was given to the water, set adrift on the waves. 2. This departure of the dead over the floods gives only one trait of interminable reverie of death. It corresponds only to a visible tableau, and it could lead one astray concerning the depth of material imagination which meditates on death, as if death itself were a substance or a life in a new substance. Water, the substance of life, is also the substance of death for ambivalent reverie. In order to interpret the totem bone, the death tree, accurately, we must keep in mind with C. G. Jung that the tree is, above all, a maternal symbol, since water is also a maternal symbol. A strange image of the encasing of seeds may be grasped in the image of the totem bone. By placing the dead person in the interior of a tree and entrusting the tree to the breast of the waters, one somehow doubles the maternal powers. The myth of burial is lived doubly. Jung tells us, because we imagine that the dead person is given back to his mother to be born again. Death and water will be, for this reverie, the most maternal of deaths. The desire of man, says Jung in another place, is that the somber waters of death may become the waters of life, that death and its cold embrace may be the maternal bosom, just as the sea, which, although it swallows up the sun, gives it new birth in its depths. Life has never been able to believe in death. 3. Here one question disturbs me. Was not death the first navigator? Well, before the living entrusted themselves to floods, was not the coffin given to the sea and to the torrent? The coffin in this mythological hypothesis would not be the last spark. It would be the first. Death would not be the last journey. It would be the first. For some profound dreamers, will still be the first true trip. Obviously, such a conception of the sea voyage is opposed from the onset by utilitarian explanations. We always imagine primitive man as being natively ingenuous. We always imagine that prehistoric man solved the problem of his subsistence in an intelligent way. It is widely assumed that utility is an unmistakable concept, and that its value was always surely and immediately obvious. Now, useful knowledge is knowledge that has already been rationalized. Conversely, to conceive of a primitive idea as a useful idea is to fall into a rationalization, which is all the more specious since today utility is an integral part of the framework of a very complete, very homogeneous, very material, very definitely closed utilitarianism. Man, alas, is not so reasonable as all that. It is as difficult for him to discover the useful as it is to discover truth. In any case, after dreaming about this problem a little, we shall see that the usefulness of the sailor is not sufficiently evident to make prehistoric man hollow out a canoe. No utility could justify the immense risk of setting out over the water. For man to run the risks implicit in navigation, powerful interests have to be present. Now, really powerful interests are visionary interests. These are the interests about which one dreams. They are not those about which one makes calculations. These are mythical interests. The hero of the sea is a hero of death. The first sailor was the first living man who was as courageous as a dead one. Therefore, when a people want to commit the living to total death, to a death with no turning back, they abandon them on the waters. Marie Delcourt has discovered under the rationalistic camouflage of traditional ancient culture the mythical meaning of Maleficent children. In many cases, they carefully avoid having these children touch the ground. They might soil it, disturb its fecundity, and thus spread their dis-ease. They carry them as quickly as possible to the sea or to the river. What could they do with a weak being which they prefer not to kill, and which they do not want to have come in contact with the ground? If not, put it on the water in a skiff destined to sink. For my part, I would suggest taking the very profound mythical explanation offered by Marie Delcourt one step further. I would interpret the birth of a Maleficent child as the birth of a being that does not belong to the normal fecundity of the earth. He is given back immediately to his element, near to death, the land of total death, that is the boundless sea, or the roaring river. Only water can cleanse the earth. This explains why it was that when such children who had been abandoned to the sea were tossed up, living on the coast, saved from the waters, they easily became miraculous beings. Having crossed over the waters, they had crossed over death. They could then create cities, save peoples, make over the world. Death is a journey, and a journey is a death. To leave is to die a little. To die is truly to leave, and no one leaves well, courageously, cleanly, except by following the current, the flow of the wide river. River. All rivers join the river of the dead. This is the only mythical death, the only departure that is an adventure. If it is true that for the unconscious, a dead person is someone who is absent, then death's navigator is the only dead person about whom one can dream indefinitely. His memory still seems to have a future. Quite different is the dead man who inhabits the cemetery. For him, the grave is still a dwelling that the living come piously to visit. Such a dead person is not totally absent, and the sensitive soul is well aware of it. We are 7, says a little girl in Wordsworth's poem. 5 are alive. The other 2 are still in the cemetery. Near them, with them, one can sew or spin. To the dead who died at sea, another dream, a special reverie is attached. In their village they leave widows who are not like others, widows with a white forehead, who dream of Oceanonox, but can admiration for the hero of the seas not silence their sorrowing? And behind certain rhetorical effects, is there no trace of a sincere dream interesting Colbert's curses? Thus, a farewell at the water's edge is the most heart-trending and, at the same time, the most literary of all farewells. Its poetry makes use of an old wellspring of dreams and heroism. It awakens in us, no doubt, the most painful of echoes. One entire facet of our nocturnal soul can be explained by the myth of death conceived as a departure over water. For the dreamer, there is a continuing transposition between this departure and death. For some dreamers, water is the new movement that beckons us toward a journey never made. This materialized departure takes us away from the earth's matter. Such astonishing grandeur is contained in this verse by Baudelaire, whose sudden image goes to the heart of our mystery. O death, ancient captain, the time has come. Let us weigh anchor. 4. If we are willing to restore to their primitive level all the unconscious values that have been grouped around funeral rites by the image of a journey over water, we shall be better understand the meaning of the river of Hades and all the legends concerning the funeral. Crossing. Customs based on reason may well entrust the dead to the tomb or to the pyre. The unconscious that bears the stamp of water will still dream beyond the grave, beyond the pyre, of a departure over the floods, having passed through earth or fire. The soul arrives at the water's edge. Profound imagination, material imagination, wants water to have its part in death. Water is needed for death to keep its meaning of a journey. For this, we may gather that for such infinite dreams, all souls, whatever the nature of their funerals be, must board Charon's boat would be a curious image if one had to contemplate it with the clear eyes of reason, but a most familiar image if, on the contrary, one knows how to consult dreams. Many are the poets who, in sleep, have lived this navigation of death. I have beheld the path of the departure. Sleep and death shall not divide us long. Hark! The ghostly torrent mingles its far roar with the breeze murmuring in the musical woods. In reliving Shelley's dream, we shall understand how the path of departure has become, little by little, a ghostly torrent. Moreover, how could funeral poetry still be attached to images so far removed from our civilization if they were not upheld by conscious values? The persistence of a poetic and dramatic attraction to such an image, in rational terms so false and exhausted, can serve to show us that natural dreams and learned traditions come together in a culture complex. With this in mind, we can put forth a Charon complex. The Charon complex is not very forceful. The image has faded a great deal by now. To many educated minds, it has suffered the fate of all too many references to a dead literature. It is nothing more than a symbol, but its weakness and its lack of color are, all in all, advantages, for they make us feel that culture and nature can, after all, coincide. First, we may see the formation in nature, that is, natural legends of images of Charon that have certainly had no contact with the classical image. Such is the case with legend concerning the ship of the dead, a legend in a thousand forms, endlessly renewed in folklore. Paul Sébillot gives this example. The legend of the boat of the dead was one of the first to be formulated on our shores. It no doubt existed here well before the Roman conquest, and in the 6th century, Procopius reported it in these terms: the fishermen and other inhabitants of Gaul who are across from the island of Britannia are entrusted with passing souls over to it, and are thus exempt from paying tribute. In the middle of the night they hear a knocking at their door. They get up and find strange boats along the shore, in which they can see no one, but which nevertheless seem so loaded down that they are about to sink, and their gunwales scarcely a thumb's width above the water. An hour suffices for the crossing, although with their own boats they have difficulty making it in a whole night. Emile Silvestre took up this account again in 1836, proof that such a legend seeks repeated literary expression. It interests us. It is a fundamental theme, a thousand variations of which are possible. Under cover of the most diverse, the most unexpected images, this theme is guaranteed stability, because it possesses the strongest of unifying forces, one unity. Thus, in the ancient Breton legends, phantom ships constantly glide by, hell ships like the Flying Dutchman. It is also common to have ships that have been wrecked come back, proof that the boat is somehow at one with the souls aboard it. Here, by the way, is an annexed image that shows its profound Roderick origin sufficiently well. Here, by the way, is an annexed image that shows its profound Roderick origin sufficiently well. These boats have grown so that at the end of a few years, a small coastal vessel is the size of a large schooner. This strange growth is well known in dreams. It is often found in dreams about water. In certain dreams, water nourishes all that it saturates. It is comparable to the fantastic images lavished on every page of Poe's tale, as found in the bottom. Message found at the bottom. It is as sure as there is a sea where the ship itself will grow in bulk like the living body of the seaman. This sea is the sea of one wick water, and it happens that in Poe's tale it is also the sea of funeral water, of formless water. In fact, the strange boat, expanded by the years, is guided by old men who lived in very ancient times. When this tale, one of his most beautiful, is reread, and endosmosis of the poetry and legends is experienced, it comes out of a most profound dream. There will occasionally flash across my mind a sensation of familiar things, and there is also always mixed up with such indistinct shadows of recollection an unaccountable memory of old foreign chronicles and ages long ago. In our sleep, it is the legends that dream. There also exist legends in which temporary Charons live, particularly those Charons in spite of themselves, who seek a substitute. Popular wisdom advises navigators not to board an unknown boat, but we must not be afraid to discover a tonality in this prudence by giving it mythical meaning. In conclusion, all the mysterious boats found so abundantly in novels about the sea participate in the ship of the dead. The reader may be fairly certain that the novelist who uses them has a more or less hidden Charon complex. In particular, the function of a simple ferryman, once placed in a literary work, is almost inevitably affected by Charon symbolism. Even though he may cross but a small river, he bears the symbol of the beyond. The ferryman is the guardian of a mystery. Visions are seen by his old eyes of a lighted, distant place, from which under frosty skies ever came a woeful voice. Add to it, says Emily Sylvester, the crimes committed at the junctions of waters, the romantic love affairs, the miraculous meetings with saints, fairies, or demons. And it is easy to understand how the legend of Ferryman formed. One of the most dramatic chapters of that green poem that is constantly being embellished by popular imagination. The Far East, like Brittany, knows of Charon's bark. Paul Claudel translates this moving poetry about the feast of the dead. When the 7th month in Chinese life returns, the flute guides the souls. The sound of the gong brings them together like bees. All along the riverbank, the barks, all ready for their journey, await the coming of the night. The bark sets out and swings around, leaving in its wide wake a string of lights. Someone is setting out little lamps, precarious lights, on the vast stretch of opaque waters. They wink a moment and die, while an arm seizes the golden scrape. The bundle of fire that dies down then flames in the midst of the smoke, touches the water's tomb with it. The deceiving bursts of light, like fish, charm the cold, drowned men. Thus, the feast mimics both the life that is extinguished and the life that departs. Water is the tomb of fire and of men. In the distance, when it seems that night and the sea together have completed the symbolism of death, the dreamer will hear the sound of the sepulchral strum. The clamor of the iron drum struck a terrible blow in the dense shade. Everything about death that is heavy and slow has also been marked by the figure of Charon. The barks loaded with souls are always on the point of sinking. It is an astonishing image in which death is afraid of dying, in which the drowned man is still afraid of shipwreck. Death is a journey which never ends, an infinite perspective filled with dangers. If the weight overloading the boat is so great, it is because the souls are heavy with sin. Charon's bark always goes to Hades. There is no pilot for the blessed. Charon's bark is thus a symbol that will remain attached to man's indestructible misfortune. It will pass through ages of suffering. As Saint has said, Charon's bark was still being used when he himself had disappeared in the face of the first fervor of Christianity. Patience. He will return. Where? Everywhere. During the earliest years of the church, go on the tombstone of Dagobert at the Abbey of St. Denis, the king, this king, or rather his soul, was depicted crossing Cocytus. In the traditional bark, At the end of the 13th century, Dante, with his great authority, had re-established the ancient Charon as the ferryman in his Inferno. After him, also in Italy, and better yet, in the Catholic city par excellence, working under the very eyes of a pope, Michelangelo painted Charon in his fresco of the Last Judgment along with God, Christ, the Virgin, and the saints. And Saint Jean concludes, without Charon, hell is impossible. In our rustic regions of Champagne, so little given to dreaming, there are nevertheless traces of the ancient fairy. Certain villages still contribute their might to him outside the church. On the eve of funerals, a relative of the deceased goes around to all the families to pay the penny of the dead. In short, a common man, the poet, and a painter like Delacroix all rediscover in their dreams the image of a guide who is to lead us into death. The living myth under the mythopoeism is a very simple one associated with a very clear image. That is why it is so enduring. When a poet takes up the image of Charon, he thinks of death as a journey. He relives the most primitive type of funeral. 5. Water in death has so far appeared to us as an accepted element. Now, I am going to group together those images in which water in death appears as a desired element. In fact, the summons of the material elements is sometimes so strong that it can help us to determine certain distinct types of suicide. It then seems as though matter helps to determine human destiny. Madame Bonaparte has ably demonstrated the double fatality of tragedy. Madame Bonaparte has ably demonstrated the double fatality of tragedy. Or, to put it better, she's shown the bonds that unite the tragic in life and the tragic in literature. The type of death chosen by men, whether it be suicide for themselves in reality or for their heroes in fiction, is never the result of chance, but in each case is rigidly fixed psychically. A paradox that I should like to elaborate on arises from this subject. In some respects, it may be said that psychological determinism is stronger in fiction than in reality. For in reality, this means for the phantasm may be lacking. In fiction, ends and means are at the disposal of the novelist. That is why crimes and suicides are more numerous in novels than in life. Drama, and especially its performance, what might be called its literary discursiveness, affect the novelist deeply, whether he wants to or not. The novelist reveals the depths of his being to us, though only undercover, literally, of his fictional characters. It will be vain for him to use a reality as a screen. It is he who projects this reality. It is he, above all, who unifies it. In real life, one cannot say everything. Life skips some links and hides its continuity. In a novel, only what is said exists. The novel displays its continuity, its deterministic forces, deterministic forces. A novel is energetic only if the author's imagination is strongly induced, only if it can discover the powerful determining forces of human nature. Since these forces come ever faster and in greater numbers, drama, it is through the dramatic element that the author reveals himself most deeply. The problem of suicide in literature is a decisive one for the judgment of dramatic values. Despite our literary stratagems, crime displays its inner workings poorly. It is too obviously a result of external circumstances. It breaks out like an event, not always in character with the killer. Suicide in literature, on the other hand, is planned like a long inner destiny. Of literary deaths, it is the most prearranged, the best prepared, and the most complete. With a little encouragement, the novelist would have the entire universe participate in the suicide of his hero. Literary suicide, then, is especially suited for giving us the imagination of death. It gives order to death images. In the realm of the imagination, the four lands of death have their supporters and their aspirants. But let us concern ourselves only with the tragic summons from waters. Water, the land of living nymphs, is also the land of dead nymphs. It is the true matter for a very feminine death. From the first scene between Hamlet and Ophelia, thus following the rules of literary preparation for suicide, Hamlet comes out of his profound reverie and murmurs as if he were a prophet who foresaw her destiny. Soft, you now, the fair Ophelia, nymph in thy horizons, be all my sins remembered. From that moment on, Ophelia is destined to die for the sins of others and to die in the river, quietly without fanfare. Her short life in itself is the life of a dead woman. Is this life without joy anything but a vain waiting, a poor echo of Hamlet's monologue? Let us then look immediately at Ophelia, her river queen. There is a willow, rose, aspen, a brook that shows his hoar leaves in the glassy stream. There with fantastic garlands did she go, of crow flowers, nettles, daisies, and long purples, that liberal shepherds give grosser name. But our cold maids do dead men's fingers call them. There, on the pendant bows, her cornet weeds, clamoring to hang, envious sliver broke, when down her weedy trophies and herself fell in the weeping brook. Her clothes spread wide, and mermaid like a while they bore her up which time she chanted snatches of old tunes, as one incapable of her own distress, or like a creature native and endued unto that element, but long it could not be, till that her garments, heavy with their drink, pulled the poor wretch from her melodious lay to muddy death. Alas, then, she is drowned? Drowned, drowned. Too much of water hast thou, poor Ophelia, and therefore I forbid my tears. But yet it is our trick, nature her custom holds, let shame say what it will when these are gone, these the women will be out. It seems to me futile to consider accident, madness, and suicide separately in this fictional death. Moreover, psychoanalysis has taught us to give accidents their psychological significance. He who plays with fire burns himself, wants to burn himself and others. He who plays with perfidious water drowns and wants to drown. On the other hand, madmen in literature still have enough reason, enough causality to be associated with the drama and to follow its law. On the fringe of action, they respect unity of action. Ophelia, then, can be our symbol of feminine suicide. She is truly a creature born to die in water. She rediscovers there, as Shakespeare says, the element to which she is native and endued. Water is the element of young and beautiful death, of flowery death, and in the dramas both of life and literature, the element of a death which neither pride nor vengeance, of masochistic suicide. Water is the profound organic symbol of woman, who can only weep about her pain and whose eyes are easily drowned in tears. A man confronted by a woman who has committed suicide understands this dismal pain with all that is feminine in him, as does Laertes. He becomes a man again by becoming dry when the tears have ceased. It is necessary to stress that images as rich in detail as the image of Ophelia in her river have, for all that, no realism at all. Shakespeare did not have observed a real drowned man. Is it necessary to stress that images as rich in detail as the image of Ophelia in her river have, for all that, no realism at all? Shakespeare need not have observed a real drowned woman as she was going down the stream. Such realism, far from evoking images, would rather block the poetic flight. If the reader who has perhaps never seen such a spectacle can nevertheless recognize it and be moved, it is because this spectacle belongs to primitive, imaginary nature. It is water dreamed in its everyday life, the water of a pond, filialized on its own, that is covered naturally with sleeping beings who abandon themselves and float, beings who die quietly. Then in death, the still floating victims of drowning seem to continue dreaming. In the drunken boat, author abode has rediscovered this image. Pale, flotsam, and ravished, a pensive, drowning man sometimes descends 6. In vain Ophelia's remains are buried in Europe. She is truly, as Ferryman says, an Ophelia who is never drowned, a jewel intact despite disaster. For centuries, she will appear to dreamers and to poets, floating on her brook with her flowers and her tresses spread out on the water. She will provide the pretext for one of the clearest of poetic synecdoches. Synecdoches. She will provide the pretext for one of the clearest of poetic synecdoches. She will be floating tresses loosened by the floods, in order thoroughly to understand the role of creative detail in reverie. Let us, for the moment, retain nothing but the image of floating tresses. We shall see that it brings to life by itself a whole symbol of the psychology of the waters, that it almost suffices in itself to explain the whole Ophelia complex. Innumerable are the legends where the ladies of fountains endlessly comb their long blonde hair. They often leave their comb of gold or ivory on the bank. The sirens, the girls, have long hair, as fine as silk, and they comb their hair with golden combs. On the banks of the Grand Ferryman can be seen a woman with disheveled hair, clothed in a long white dress, and drowned there long ago. Everything becomes elongated in the current, the dress and the hair. The current seems to smooth and comb the hair. From the rocks in the ford, the river plays like living tresses. Sometimes, the Madame's hair is the instrument of her misdeeds. Berenger's Ferryman records a story from Lower Lusatia. The Undine, on the parapet bridge, was busy combing her magnificent hair. Woe to the rash man who got too close to her, for he was enveloped in her hair and thrown into the water. The most uninspired stories take care not to leave out this image-creating detail. When, in a tale by Madame Robert, Tamarine, overcome with cares and regrets, leaps into the sea, she is straightway seized by the Undines, who quickly dress her in a gauze dressed of sea green shining with silver, and who loosen her hair so that it falls and waves on her breast, in order for the human being himself to float on the waters. Everything within her must float. As always in the realm of the imagination, the inversion of the image proves its importance. It proves its completeness and its naturalness. It suffices for hair which has been loosened to fall, to flow onto bare shoulders, for the whole symbol of water to be reawakened in the admirable poem for Annie, in itself so slow and so simple. One reads this stanza, and so it lies happily, bathing in many, a dream of the truth and the beauty of Annie, drowned in a bath of the tresses of Annie. The same inversion of an Ophelia complex is felt in D'Annunzio's novel Maybe Yes, Maybe No. A servant is combing the hair of Isabella, who is seated in front of her mirror. We point out in passing infantilism, a scene where a lover, though fiery and strong-willed, has her hair combed by strange ends. Furthermore, this infantilism encourages a complexual reverie. Her hair glided like slow water, and with it 1,000 things in her life, shapeless, dark, unstable things between recall and oblivion. And suddenly above this flux, through what mystery is here combed by a servant girl able to evoke the brook, the past, and the consciousness. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? And while she looked within herself for the answer, everything lost its form, dissolved, and became fluid again. The repeated passage of the comb through her mass of hair was like incantation, which had always been and would continue forever. Her face, the depths of the mirror, drew away, deprived of its contours, then drew near, coming back from the bottom, was no longer her face. You see it all. The brook is there in its entirety, with its endless fleeing, its depth, its ever-changing mirror, creator changes. It is there in a hair, in any hair, when someone has meditated on such things. He or she understands that the psychology of imagination cannot even begin until these true natural images have been examined in detail. It is from their natural seed, nourished by the strength of the material elements, that images multiply and cluster. Elemental images proliferate, become recognizable. They reach that point because they want to be different. But a complex is so systematic, a psychological phenomenon, that a single feature is enough to reveal it in its entirety. The only power of a general image, which exists only through one of its particular features, is in itself sufficient to show the limitations of the psychology of the imagination entirely absorbed in the study of forms. Many psychologies of the imagination, due to the exclusive attention they give to the problem of form, are condemned to be only psychologies of concept or structural. They are scarcely more than psychologies of the image-filled concept. In the end, the literary imagination, which can develop only in the realm of the image of an image and must translate forms, is more suitable for the study of our need to imagine than the pictorial imagination. Let us now pursue the dynamic nature of imagination, to which I hope to devote a later study. In the theme that we are developing, it seems clear that it is not the form of the hair that makes us think of running water, but its movement. The hair can belong to an angel in heaven. If it is flowing, it leads naturally to its aquatic image. This is what happens with the angels in Seraphita. From their tresses came weaves of light, and their movements stirred up rippling tremors like the waves of a phosphorescent sea. We sense, moreover, how barren these lines would seem if water metaphors were not powerfully valorized ones. Thus, living tresses, glorified by a poet, must suggest movement, a wave which passes, a wave which trembles. Permanent waves that cap of uniform ringlets by mobilizing natural undulations, block reveries that they should elicit. At the edge of the waters, everything is tresses, all moving foliage drawn by the freshness of the waters, lets its tresses hang down over them. And Balzac praises this humid atmosphere where nature puts perfume on her greenish tresses in preparation for marriage. Sometimes it seems that too philosophical a reverie diverts the complex. Thus, a straw carried off by the brook is the eternal symbol of the insignificance of our destiny. But let there be a little less serenity in our meditation, a little more sadness in the dreamer's heart, and the whole phantom will reappear. The grass is held back by the reeds. Are they not the hair of a dead woman? Lila, in her pensive sadness, contemplates them and murmurs, "We shall not even remain afloat like those dried grasses which are floating there, sad and drooping like the tresses of a woman who has drowned." We thus see how Ophelia's image forms at the slightest provocation. It is a fundamental image in reverie about waters. In vain will Jules Lefleur play the part of a desensitized Hamlet. Ophelia, that's not life. Ophelia, another Ophelia in my portion. Ophelia, Ophelia, your beautiful body on the pond is floating sticks to my old madness. No one without risk, as he says, has eaten of the fruit of the unconscious. Hamlet remains for Lefleur, a strange person who has made rings in the water. In the water, one might as well say in the sky. The synthetic image of water, woman, and death cannot be broken up. The hint of irony visible in Jules Lefleur's images is not unusual. Guided pour Taillier in the life of Franz Liszt mentions that the image of Ophelia described in 58 measures crosses the mind ironically. The artist himself wrote this word as a heading for the Allegro. We get the same impression, stressed, trifle crudely in the laundress of my first sorrows, a tale by St. Paul. One day my soul threw itself into the river of the Ophelias. Now this happened in very naive times. The corn yellow hair on her brow floats for a little while, like a bookmark until the 2 pages of water close. Into my strange coma slid the breasts of swans. Oh, the fools who drown themselves in the river of Ophelia's. The image of Ophelia withstands even macabre element, which great poets alone can obliterate. Despite this element, Paul, Fort's ballad returns to gentleness, and the white body of the drowned will rise up tomorrow pink in the gentle lapping of the morning. There will drift back the sound of silvery bells. What a kind sea! Water makes death more human and mingles clear sounds with the dullest of groans. Sometimes an enhanced gentleness and more artful shadows temper to extremes the realism of death. But one water word, just one, is enough to reveal the profound image of Ophelia. Thus, the Princess Aileen, in the solitude of her room, haunted by premonition of her destiny, murmurs, how they cry out these reeds in my room. 7. Like all great poeticizing complexes, the Ophelia complex can rise to the cosmic level. There it symbolizes the union of the moon and floods, a huge floating reflection that seems to provide the image of an entire world that fades and dies. Thus it happens that Joaquin Gasquet's Narcissus, one foggy, melancholy night, gathers stars from the cleared sky across the shadow of the waters. He gives us a fusion of 2 image principles that rise together to the cosmic level. A cosmic Narcissus uniting with a cosmic Ophelia. Decisive proof of the irresistible upward surge of the imagination. The moon spoke to me. I paled, thinking of the tenderness of its words. Give me your bouquet. The bouquet picked in the pale sky. She said to me, like a woman in love. And I, like Ophelia, I saw her, all pale in her flowing, flowing purple dress. Her eyes, color of furvish and delicate flowers, wavered. I held out my sheaf of stars to her. Then a supernatural perfume emanated from her. A cloud was spying on us. Nothing is missing from this scene of love between the sky and the water, not even a spy. The moon, the night, and the stars then cast their reflections like so many flowers onto the river. When we contemplate it in the flood, the starry world seems to drift away. The glimmers that pass by on the surface of the waters are like inconsolable. They're like inconsolable beings. Light itself is being betrayed, misunderstood, forgotten in the shade. It has broken its splendor, its heavy dress fell. Oh, the sad skeletal Ophelia. She sank deep in the river. As the stars departed, she went away with the flow of the stream. I wept and stretched out my arms to her. She rose a little, her flesh less head thrown back, for her sad locks were streaming down, and with a voice which still hurts me, she whispered, "Thou knowest who I am. I am thy reason am I not? And I am going away, going away." For a second I saw again, above the water, her feet, as pure, as incorporeal as those of springtime. They disappeared. A strange calm flowed through my blood. There we see the intimate play of a reverie that marries the moon and the flood and follows their story the whole length of the current. Such a reverie realizes in the full sense of the word the melancholy of night, the river. It humanizes reflections and shadows. It knows their drama and pain. This reverie participates in the struggle of the moon and the clouds. It gives them the will to struggle, attributing this will to all phantasms, to all images that move and change. And when rest comes, when heavenly beings accept the simplest and slightest movements of the river, this enormous reverie takes the floating moon for the slain body of a betrayed woman. It sees in the offended moon Shakespearean Ophelia. Is it necessary to stress once more that the features of such an image are in no way of realistic origin? They are produced by a projection of the dreamer. A strong poetic background is necessary for seeing the image of Ophelia and the moon reflected in the water. Of course, Joachim Gasquet's vision is not unusual. Traces of it can be found in poets of the most diverse characters. Let us note, for example, this lunar aspect of Jules Lafleur's Ophelia. He props his elbows in the windowsill for a moment and gazes out at the beautiful golden full moon that looks at itself in the calm sea, and there makes a broken column of black velvet and liquid gold, which twists back and forth, a magic thing with no purpose. These reflections on melancholy water. The holy and damned Ophelia thus floated all night. In the same way, we could interpret George Rodenbach's Briggs the Dead as the Opheliization of an entire city, without ever seeing a dead woman floating in a canal. The novelist is seized by the Shakespearean image. In the evening, an autumnal solitude, when the wind swept away the last leaves, he felt more than ever a desire to have done with life, an impatience for the grave. It seemed that a shadow stretched out from the towers over his soul, that a word of counsel came to him from the old walls, that a whispering voice rose up from the water coming to meet him as it came to meet Ophelia, the way Shakespeare's grave digger told it. It is impossible, I believe, to bring together in the same theme images that are more diverse, since we must recognize that they have unity since the name Ophelia comes repeatedly to the lips under the most varied of circumstances, we conclude that this unity, her name, is the symbol for a great law of the imagination. The imagination of misfortune and death finds in the matter of water a particularly powerful and natural material image. Thus, for certain souls, water truly holds death in its substance. It communicates a reverie. Where horror is slow and tranquil. In the third dream elegy, Rilke, it seems, lived the smiling horror of the waters, the horror which smiles with the tender smile of a weeping mother. Death in calm water has maternal features. The peaceful horror is dissolved in water which lightens the living seed. Here, water mixes its ambivalent images of birth and death. It is a substance full of reminiscences and prescient reveries. When a reverie or dream is thus absorbed into a substance, the entire being receives a strange permanence from it. The dream falls asleep, becomes stabilized. It tends to participate in the slow and monotonous life of an element. Now that its element has been found, all its images will be based on it. It becomes material. It becomes cosmic. Albert Gwynn has recalled that the true one-rick synthesis for Carius is a deep synthesis in which psychic being is incorporated into a cosmic reality. For certain dreamers, water is the universe of death, a filialization that is substantial. Water is nocturnal. Near it, everything leans toward death. Water communicates with all the powers of night and death. Thus, for Paracelsus, the moon impregnates the substance of the water with a noxious influence. Water which has been exposed to lunar rays for a long time remains poisoned water. These material images, so strong in Paracelsian thought, Paracelsian, Paracelsian thought, still live in poetic reverie today. The moon gives to those whom it influences a taste for water from the Styx. This is Victor Emily Michelet. No one ever recovers from having dreamed next to water. 8. If all the interminable reveries of fateful destiny, death, and suicide are so strongly attached to water, then we should not be surprised to find that for so many people, water is the melancholy element par excellence. Better yet, to borrow an expression from Huysmans, water is melancholizing element. Is the water the melancholizing element? Water is the melancholizing element. Melancholizing water is the dormant factor in entire works, like those in Rodenbach and Poe. Edgar Allan Poe's melancholy does not stem from lost happiness, from ardent passion that life has destroyed. It is actually dissolved unhappiness. His melancholy is truly substantial. My soul, he says somewhere, my soul was a stagnant tide. Lamartine also found out that during its storms, water is a suffering element. Living on the edge of Lake Geneva, he wrote, while the waves were tossing their spray against his window, I've never studied the murmurs, the moans, the angers, the tortures, the groans, and the undulations of water so much as during these nights and days spent thus all alone in the monotonous society of the lake. I could have written a poem, the poem of the waters, without omitting the slightest note. This poem, I feel, would have been an elegy. Somewhere, Lamartine also wrote, water is the sad element. Superfluina, nonius, stimos et remorse. Why? It is because water weeps with everyone. When the heart is sad, all the water in the world turns into tears. I dipped my silver cup into the bubbling spring, was filled with tears. No doubt the image of tears will come to mind 1,000 times to explain the sadness of waters. But this parallel is insufficient. I want to conclude by stressing the underlying reasons for marking the substance of water with a sign of its particular form of misfortune. Death is in it. Up until now, I have, for the most part, mentioned images concerning the journey into death. Water carries things far away. Water passes like the days. But another reverie takes hold of us to teach us the loss of our being in total dissolution. Each of the elements has its own type of dissolution. Earth into dust, fire into smoke. Water dissolves more completely. It helps us to die completely. Such, for example, is Faust's desire in the final scene of Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus. O soul, be changed into little water drops and fall into the ocean where be found. At certain times, this impression of dissolution penetrates the most stable, the most optimistic of souls. Thus, Claudel has lived through those hours when the sky is no longer anything but the mist and the space of water, when everything is dissolved, so that one would look about in vain for an outline or a form. Nothing to mark the horizon but the cessation of the dark est color. The matter of which everything is composed is united in a single water, similar to that of which these tears, which I feel running down my cheek, are composed. Let anyone live the sequence of these images exactly, and he will have an example of their progressive concentration and materialization. The first to be dissolved is a landscape in the rain. Lines and forms melt away. Little by little, the whole world is brought together. Again, in its water, a single matter has taken over everything. Everything is dissolved. we shall be able to judge what philosophic depth a poet who accepts the total lesson of reverie can attain. If we relive that admirable image by Paul Willard, I was like a boat sinking in enclosed water, like a dead man. I had but one element. Closed in water takes death into its bosom. Water makes death elemental. Water dies with the dead in its substance. Water is then a substantial nothingness. No one can go further into despair than this. For certain souls, water is the matter of despair.